So good morning, everyone. So as Satya mentioned, actually she didn't, but what this presentation is about is, before we start the labor panel, I'm going to give a bit of context into the current labor force and population of Sri Lanka. So we'll be looking at some figures and some stats, and in the panel discussion, the panelists will pick up on some of these and discuss the driving factors. So we'll jump straight into it. The first thing we'll look at is the population of the country. So for 2022, UNFPA estimates that the total population will be 21.6 million. And the average annual rate of population change will be 0.3%. So this graph actually shows that the total population of the country has been on a continuous growth since the 1960s. But this growth is not expected to continue for long. According to ADB estimates, this population growth, or this era of continuous population growth, is expected to end in about 2 decades. So the driving factors of this end of an era, essentially, is, first of all, the rapid decline in the fertility rate of the country. So in 1960, the fertility rate was 5.5 for the country, but in 2019, it's 2.02. The other driving factor is the increased life expectancy due to the investments the country made in human development. And our life expectancy is comparable to that of the average upper middle income economies as well. So because of these two driving factors predominantly, the ADB estimates that the population will peak in 2038 and then contract. So after 2038, Sri Lanka will be facing a contracting population. So if you actually analyze the growth or the proportion of the population in each of these broad age groups, you see that due to the factors that I mentioned previously, everyone in the age group, other than everyone in the age group of 65 and above, all the other age groups are going to contract, whereas the number of people in the age group of 65 and above is going to increase. And this has a direct effect on the age dependency ratio, because each member in the working population is now going to have to support people in retirement, essentially. So if you look at some key factors, or key stats actually, we see that the working age population will peak in 2027, and then it will start to decline. Then the population of those aged 65 or more will double by 2040 compared with 2015. Then by 2030, 1 in 5 Sri Lankans will be over the age of 60, and most of it will be women. So this will actually make Sri Lanka one of the fastest aging countries in Asia. So now we'll look at the labor force, where it is currently. So in 2021, according to the TCS definition, which is on the slide, the total labor force was 8.6 million. And the total labor force participation rate was 49.9%. And the unemployment rate was 5.1%. I think one of the key defining features of the Sri Lankan labor force, particularly the labor force participation rate, is that the male labor force participation rate has consistently been higher than the female participation rate. And parallel to that, you can see that the unemployment rate for females are actually much higher than for males. And if you take a look at the change in the labor force participation rate between 2002 and 2020, you can see that the biggest contraction, or the largest contraction, has happened for the age group between 20 and 24. So now that we know the labor force and the proportion of employment essentially, and the labor force participation rate, we'll take a look at where they are located, where they're employed. So if you look at it in terms of the major economic sectors, you see that a majority of them, ranging from 40 to 50%, is actually employed in the service sector. And the graph on the right shows you that in terms of employment status, most of these employees are private employees. And another key feature in the Sri Lankan labor force is that our informal employment is twice, or in most instances, more than twice, our formal employment. So informal employment, according to the DCS, is essentially anyone that is not subjected to national labor legislation, income tax, social protection, and employment benefits. So these could be unpaid family workers, informally self-employed people, domestic workers, as well as informal employees in the formal and informal firms. So the other thing that I want to touch on is the migration, because we can't talk about population and labor force without talking about the migration. So you see the graph on the left actually breaks it down by skill level. So you go from housemaid, unskilled, to professional. And on the graph on the right shows you that the female registrations with Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment, roughly around 90% of the women that register there register for clerical or mid-level, for clerical and related jobs. And I would like to end this presentation by just looking at the stock of migrant labor force that is in the country or has been in the country previously. This model cannot be extended to 2020 and 2021 because the forecasting methodology does not hold due to there was a large number of returnees in 2020. But this is where the migrant labor force is at. So with this, I will end this presentation. The panelists will pick up on some of these numbers and just talk about what drives these, what's causing these numbers to be the way they are. Thank you.